Welcome to the Shorten anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of Battle Through the Heavens. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. Battle Through the Heavens, Season 1, Episode 7. Leaving the first auction hall, Xiaoyan returned to the inspection room and, under the respectful gaze of the middle-aged man, patiently waited. A few minutes later, with a flurry of footsteps, two shadows pushed the door open. Haha, are you the owner of the Foundation Elixir? Mister, this must be the first time you've come to Wutan City, right? With a gust of perfume, a charming yet numbing giggle sounded beside Xiaoyan. It made his firm mindset waver. After cursing Yao Jing, Xiaoyan furrowed his face further within the robe before turning around to look at the red-dressed woman beside him. With close contact, Xiaoyan once again realized the charm within Yafei. On the dazzling face was a pair of watery eyes with long eyelashes that seemed to always send out strands of binding ropes to men. Looking down past the graceful white neck, Xiaoyan was almost sucked into her cleavage. Her natural charm even influenced the calm Xiaoyan. Although Xiaoyan had a red face, thankfully, it was covered by his robe. Calming himself, Xiao Yao slightly nodded, and at the same time Yao Lao's voice also floated out. The auction was successful. Give me the money, I have something to do. As if she was intrigued by the age of the owner of the black robe, Yafei covered her mouth as she laughed. After a while, she recovered. Please excuse us for a little while longer. We're still working on the paperwork. Slightly nodding, Xiaoyan didn't open his mouth again and moved his sight from Yafei while keeping silent. Looking at the mysterious person covered in the black robe, Yafei's brows furrowed. Looks like her prideful beauty had no effect. Pursing her lips, her gaze swept over the mysterious person, trying to discern every single detail in order to find out who she was dealing with. After sweeping through Xiaoyan and not getting any information, Yafei disappointedly looked at Guni. After their eyes met, she bit her lips and asked, Mister, Yafei has rarely seen an alchemist that doesn't have the Alchemist badge. Could I ask for your name? Huh? Girl, coming to this place means that I need to say who I am. Under the black robe, Yao Lao's voice coldly spoke up. Yafei was only curious. If Mister doesn't want to say it, Yafei wouldn't force you. Yafei lightly laughed. Through the black robe, Xiaoyan watched the white legs wrapped in a red dress besides. Even though he couldn't help but admire her beauty, he silently reminded himself that for Yafei to become the top auctioneer, she wasn't some flower pot. Everyone said that beauty was trouble after all, in the entire Wutan City. There were countless suitors, but even to this day, none of them achieved their goal. Even though many of them blamed the primer auction house behind her, none of them would claim that she was a pretty flower pot. With such a clever woman besides him, Xiaoyan was as careful as if he was walking on top of ice. He was afraid that Yafei would discover something from him, but thankfully, with Yao Lao talking, the mysterious geezer wouldn't be charmed by the Yao Jing besides him. At the same time, the taxes that the auctions take would go from 5% to 2%. Hearing that, Xiaoyan's brows jumped. Compared to the blabber before, he liked this kind of solid benefits, so after pausing for a while, he took the crystal card. Seeing the long and pale hand out of the back robe, a glint of confusion flashed across Yafei's eyes. The voice from the person under the black robe was obviously the voice of an old man, but he has a hand that looks like a young man. This person, who is he? At this time, a waitress ran in and courteously handed a green card to Yafei. Mister, the Foundation Elixir sold for 40,000 gold coins, and taking out 2% as auction fees, the rest is in here. Yafei smiled while handing the green card over. Taking the green card, Xiaoyan's tense heart fell. The funds for his training were inside that tiny green card. 40,000 gold coins. That would be enough to train to a Daojia. Since he already got the money, Xiaoyan didn't have any more reason to stay, and after carelessly pushing his hands together, a wizened voice calmly said, I can leave now, right? Hey, of course. If you would like to auction off any more pills, please keep the primer auction house in mind. Yafei smiled. Carelessly responding, Xiaoyan stood up and left the tense room. Watching the disappearing shadow of Xiaoyan, the smile on Yafei's face slowly disappeared, and she plopped down into a nearby chair. Guni Shushu, is he really an alchemist? After an awkward silence, Yafei broke the stillness. Yeah, and his alchemy skills are better than mine. That's second-tier foundation elixir. I can't refine it, Goonie answered while sighing. Even with the formula? Slightly wincing, Yafei's red mouth carelessly let out a dangerous sentence. Hearing Yafei's words, Goonie's face changed, and he hurriedly said, "A formula is an alchemist's life. Please don't think that again. To carelessly anger a mysterious alchemist, even for the Primer family, is a huge deal. A couple of dozen years ago, the famous Chesh family of Jiama Empire enraged Pilking Gu He and was annihilated by 4 Dao Wangs that Gu He sent. Even the Jiama Empire's royalty wouldn't control the matter. Even though our family is much stronger than the Czech family, it's best not to offend some mysterious alchemist. Alchemists are like a hornet's nest. Once you poke it, he'll find countless friends, and many experts would love to have an alchemist owe them a favor." Watching the panicking Goonie, Yafei bitterly smiled while massaging her forehead. "Goonie Shushu, what are you saying? I wasn't thinking any of that. Do you think that Yafei has wasted these few years? I was reminding you." Hearing Yafei's words, Goonie let out a breath. He was really afraid that she would do something stupid. Pursing her lips, Yafei propped up her cheek while sighing. "Alchemists, they really are some dangerous people, but why don't I have such a talent?" After he sneaked back into his room, Xiaoyan quickly closed the door and went to the corner of the room, before finally taking out a bunch of medical herbs and magic crystals. He carefully placed them in the cabinet and deeply sniffed the smell of herbs as he smiled with relief. To practice uninterrupted, Xiaoyan had purchased the amount of herbs needed for 8 months of usage, allowing him to practice non-stop for the rest of the year. As he affectionately patted the cabinet, his lips cracked open and he lazily goes on the side of his bed, putting his head down. Today's activities had made him really tired. "Xun Er, are you there?" A mumbled voice and a knock passed through his door. Opening his blurry eyes, Xiaoyan hurriedly jumped out of his bed, then opened his room's door, looking at Xiaozhou outside of the door and asked, "Father, do you need something? Can't I see for you even if I don't need anything from you? You kid, you hid from me for 2 months," Xiaozhan reprimanded as he rubbed Xiaoyan's head affectionately. Looking at Xiaozhan's warm, smiling face, Xiaoyan's was moved as he pumped his sore nose, not knowing what to say. "Are you still feeling responsible for that? Haha, if she can't take a liking to my son, it is her loss. You don't have to be sad. Why should a great man act like a little kid? I know that this son of Xiaojan is not a cripple," Xiaozhan boldly said. "Haha, father. After 3 years, Xun Er will go to the faction of Misty Clouds personally," Xiaoyan said in a soft voice with a smile. Xiao Zhao's smiling face became more serious as he stared at Xiaoyan. After a while, he said with some hesitation, "Father feels fine, but are you really going to? Father isn't saying that you can't reach Nalan Yanren, but the strength of the faction of Misty Clouds?" Xiaoyan smiled as he nodded, his thin lips forcing a somewhat stubborn line. "Father, that there are some things that as a man I have to bear." "Aha, this temper of yours resembles mine much. If your 2 big brothers knew that you thought like this, they would probably be very happy." Towards Xiaoyan's dedication, Xiaozhan smiled pleased before sighing and nodded heavily. "Good, father waits for his son to give him some face. I want the old bastard Nalan Shu to beg me to remake that marriage promise." Xiaoyan nodded and couldn't help but laugh. "Hey, I'll give you this. Consider it as your father's support." He handed to Xiaoyan a very familiar white bottle. Looking at this elixir that went back to his own hands, Xianyan didn't know whether to laugh or to cry, but on his face he maintained a puzzled expression. "Father, this is foundation elixir. It'll accelerate your duchy cultivation. I just bought it today." Xiaozhan's mouth smiled. "You must have spent a lot of money for this, right?" As he received the white jade bottle, Xiaoyan's heart felt warm. 40,000 gold coins, but if it can be of use to you, it is worth its price. Xiaozhan smiled as though he didn't care. "You spent 40,000 gold coins for buying me this foundation spirit elixir? Won't the elders perhaps cause trouble to you using this excuse?" Xiaoyan smiled bitterly. "Tsusk, I am the clan leader. They can at most utter some words," Xiaozhan said coldly. "Father, thank you. During the adult ceremony in 1 year, I will make them shut their mouth completely." Xiaoyan calmly laughed as he said that. "Good, I am waiting for my son to transform once more." Although he didn't know from where Xiaoyan's confidence came from, Xiaojian was very happy seeing his son's confident appearance. All right, I won't disturb your rest. If there are any problems, come and see your father as a family member. I cannot let you be disgraced. Waving his hand, Xiaojian turned around as he took big strides leaving the front yard. Shit, I also have to face these old fools now. I only spent 40,000 gold coins, but they will act like I had spent the money that was supposed to be used for buying their coffins. From the night, Xiaojian's mutters floated to Xiaoyan. Looking at his father vanish into the darkness, Xiaoyan touched his nose and smiled while saying in a low voice, "Relax, father. I will use reality to make these people quiet. 3 years before, I could make them look up at me. 3 years after, I will still be able to." After standing at his door for a while, Xiaoyan put away the white jade bottle. Then he shot a look at the corner of the room, teasing, "Girl, is it fun to eavesdrop on people?" "Xiaoyan Gege, that was keen from you." From the corner, a pretty young girl wearing a purple skirt came out elegantly. Leaning her little head, a big smile was revealed on her beautiful face. Looking at the mischievous girl's face, Xiaoyan helplessly shook his head. Where did Xiaoyan Gege go this afternoon? Xun Er came forward, walked up lightly and asked with a smile, "I was just on a little stroll." "Is that so?" Her eyes looking up and down, Xun Er suddenly took a step forward and bent slightly. Her nose wrinkled while she said, "I smell the fragrance of a woman." Come on, why would I have a woman's fragrance?" Xiaoyan's immature face suddenly blushed, but in the dark, his, as well as the girl's face, couldn't be seen clearly. He. Seemingly liking this predicament Xiaoyan was in, Xun Er laughed and a moment later stopped laughing, before quietly saying, "A moment ago I also heard Xiao Shushu's words. I believe that Xiaoyan Gege, yup. In the future, you really want to go to the faction of the Misty Clouds. Xun Er will come with you, to help you." Hearing this, Xiaoyan blinked and tightly stared at the young girl's beautiful small face. Under Xiaoyan's unrestrained vision, Xun Er's her face flushed a little from shyness as she whispered, "Xiaoyan Gege, what are you looking at?" Heh, Xun Er can also blush, such a rare sight, Xiaoyan unexpectedly said with a smile. Xun Er coldly glanced at Xiaoyan and she muttered under her breath, "And you can also glance at people this way. Good, have confidence in Jegi. Although the faction of Misty Clouds is formidable, I am still young. This Yun, who spoils that girl Nalan Yanran, definitely isn't too great of a teacher." Xiaoyan smiled as he rubbed the black hair of the young girl. "Well, it is late. Head back for a rest." Looking at Xiaoyan waving, Xun Er shakes her head reluctantly and went into the darkness under his sight. After turning a corner, sounds could be heard from a quarrel between Xiaojian and the several elders. The topic of the quarrel, how the 40,000 gold coins were used. Stopping, Xun Er's little eyebrows wrinkled and she lets out a small sigh while a purple card appeared between her slim fingers. Her fingertips flicking the purple-colored gold card, making the purple gold card flash into golden light as it soared towards the room where the elders are quarreling with Xiaojian. Her fingertips flicking the purple-colored gold card, making the purple gold card flash into golden light as it soared towards the room where the elders are quarreling with Xiaojian. The room suddenly became silent while Xun Er faintly said, "This is the money for the Foundation elixir. In this card there are 100,000 gold coins. Now that I've given you this, I hope that you elders won't continue to give Uncle Xiao trouble." The room was completely silent before the yes acknowledgments from the three elders came through. Octane blast! In the forest, a crisp roar rung out. An agile shadow was jumping flexibly in these woods, and even though the forest was densely covered with thorns, they didn't obstruct him at all. In the next instant, the shadow unexpectedly stopped before a 0.5 meter large tree, and with the body half slanted, an elbow slammed against the tree. Bang! A noise rang as wood splinters scattered. Spidery cracks appeared on the point of impact and spread throughout the whole tree. Crunch! The tree had a huge gaping hole with the elbow hit and emitted a crunching sound before loudly falling to the ground a moment later. The moment the big tree fell, the agile shadow quickly took a few steps back vigorously like a monkey and lightly floated to a green-colored stone. Looking at the results of his efforts, Xiaoyan's delicate small face showed a smile. In the past 3 months, this was the first time he had succeeded in using the Octane Blast, a high Duan level skill. This octane blast that could rival a Didu technique didn't let Xiaoyan down. With Xiaoyan's 6 Duan Qi, he could rival the destruction of a person at 8 Duan Qi. The more one's Duan Qi level rises, the harder it is for one to raise their Duan Qi. But since the auction, Xiaoyan went into intensive training for 3 months, and only a few days before, did his Duan Qi jump from 5 Duan Qi to 6 Duan Qi. To gain 1 Duan Qi in 3 months, although this speed is slower compared to the 2 months needed for reaching 5 Duan Qi, Xiaoyan was still very satisfied. When he was training before, it took him an entire half year to go from 5 Duan Qi to 6 Duan Qi. The current speed is terrifying. After having used Octane Blast, Xiaoyan's whole body was like a sponge which was suddenly squeezed of its water. A noticeable pain was constantly corroding his nerves, while the veins on his arms were visibly pulsing. These were the signs of extreme exhaustion. Licking his lips, Xiaoyan struggled to turn his head to look at his right elbow. What entered his vision was a crimson elbow. Tss. A corner of his mouth cracked open while Xiaoyan inhaled a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, "No wonder I had to bear such harsh beatings, or else what this strike would have broken wouldn't have been the tree, but my arm." This Octane Blast skill is pretty much a comparison of who has the harder body. His whole body lying on the ice-cold stone, Xiaoyan's rapid breathing slowly calmed down. However, the aching sensations of Xiaoyan's body made him not want to move even his finger yet. With Xiaoyan's 6 Duan Qi, he could at most use the Octane Blast once, and after using it, he would be completely depleted of his strength until much later. Xiaoyan threw back his head, narrowed his eyes, and lazily looked at the floating clouds in the blue sky. A slight breeze brushes by, blowing a wisp of his black hair to flap against his forehead. Seeping through his body as Xiaoyan rested were the foundation elixirs that he had absorbed for the past months, and now they were at work, repairing his muscle tissue and cells at maximum speed, bringing new energy to Xiaoyan. "Teacher, how long do I need to keep practicing before I can attain 7 Duan Qi?" While his eyes were shut, Xiaoyan suddenly whispered. His goal was to attain 7th rank and thus acquiring the qualification to enter the Xiaoclan's Duqi Hall, where he could find Qi methods to practice. Even though at this point those Qi methods are at a far too low level for him, he must acquire these qualifications because it related to the face of his father. A cold breeze blew by as Yao Lao's transparent body appeared beside the enormous stone. With a happy expression in his face as he looked at his junior, Yao Lao first took note of the big tree. Then he nodded as he said with a smile, "Your training speed is beyond my expectations. Originally, I believed that even with the help of the elixir, you would need a year before entering 7 Duan Qi, or is it because you were suppressed far too hard before bouncing back now? Looking at this progress, within 2 months, you can certainly enter the 7th Duqi rank." Hearing this, Xiaoyan's lips lifted up, making a turn of a faint smile. He really wanted to know, after these 3 years during which he has been unceasingly taunted by his clan members, when they will see his strength, what kind of expression will they show? That day when he was talking to Nalan Yanran in the main hall, didn't those words apply to them as well? I, Xiaoyan, could create a miracle 3 years ago, and 3 years later, I can still do it. His vision glittered a little as Xiaoyan thought about half a year before, how he was taunted in the main hall. But even though his silhouette was lonely, it was unbending and persistent. "Nalan Yanran, I am catching up to you step by step. Wait for me. We shall meet in faction of misty clouds in 3 years." The corner of his mouth suddenly frowning a little, the youth jumped as he raised his head to roar at the distant sky. Watching at his junior roaring, Yao Lao showed a smile and didn't stop him. People need pressure to mature. The current Xiaoyan has enough talent, but what he needs is pressure to push him. Nalan Yanran's decision was the best pressure possible. Let her be your stepping stone. In the road to become respected, you still have a big distance left to finish. Go, let's head back for practicing. Roaring several times, the smile on Xian Yao's face grew bigger. Soon he jumped off the boulder and waved at Yao Lao before beginning his descent from the mountain, still smiling. Time was like water, slipping through one's finger quickly and mysteriously. The scorching summer had been replaced with the cool fall, and the light green branches had already showed hints of yellow. The room was still neat, and sunlight would still scatter through the windows. There was a wood basin in the room where a young man was training. He had both of his eyes closed and both hands folded. The training for the majority of the year had forced a hint of stubbornness to appear on the young man's delicate and smooth face. His tight lips showed how determined he was, and his original white skin, that was as white as a woman's, had become slightly yellow with the beatings in the past months. His small physique didn't seem too muscular, but had the burst potential like a jaguar. Looking from every angle, the young man was transforming at a terrifying speed, and when this transformation was done, he would shock everyone. Under the smooth breathing of the young man, strands of green airflow slowly lifted from the wood basin and followed the young man's breath into his body. I will get to 7 Duan Qi today. When he was training, Xiaoyan suddenly had the thought pop into his head. Even though there was no proof to back the thought up, it felt as if it was the word of God, the truth. In the previous month, Xiaoyan had attempted to get to 7 Duan Qi quite a few times, but every time failure would greet him. Maybe it was because today's training was basically the last drop to a full cup, but finally Xiaoyan knew that he would get to 7 Duan Qi. The sudden thought made Xiaoyan almost break his folded hands apart and exit from training. Thankfully, Xiaoyan was able to suppress the thought and take an effort to calm down. As his breath calmed, Xiaoyan started to greedily absorb energy to break through 7 Duan Qi. In the wooden basin, the green elixir started emitting 7 colored sparkles as countless strands evaporated and rushed into Xiaoyan's body. As the green airflows increased in number, they not only covered Xiaoyan's body, but also hid the wooden basin within a layer of green mist. Under Xiaoyan's absorption of the energy, the green liquid within the basin was paling considerably. Because of the huge amount of energy that he absorbed, Xiaoyan's small face began to flush red, but also glow hints of green. Xiaoyan, who was rushing 7 Duan Qi, had undoubtedly become a huge magnet, not only sucking energy from the surrounding air, but also creating mini whirlpools within the wood basin. In the first 9 Duan Qis, 1 to 3 Duan Qi were considered low level, 4 to 6 Duan Qi were middle level, and 7 to 9 Duan Qi were high level. The 7th Duan Qi was basically a gap between Duan Qis. Once one gets to 7 Duan Qi, then they would have gotten to the high-level Duan Qi and have a couple times as much Do Qi compared to 6 Duan Qi. Therefore, 7 Duan Qi was considered as the first lock to becoming a dojo. With the green whirlpools, the green liquid within the basin became lighter and lighter in color before changing to a bowl of clear water. Without the energy from the foundation elixir, the green aura around Xiaoyan's face slackened, and he could only absorb the energy in the air to complete his 7 Duan Qi. Even though it was possible to use the energy in the air to break through 7 Duan Qi, but it would take much longer, and even if he does get to 7 Duan Qi, he would need an entire month before he would find himself truly at the level of 7 Duan Qi. But what Xiaoyan was missing the most was time. When the foundation elixir finally gave out, Xiaoyan's black ring flickered and a jade green foundation elixir droplet fell into the basin. Suddenly, the clear water turned back into a shade of dark green. With the fresh foundation elixir's energy, Xiaoyan silently thanked Yao Lao, and while keeping his hands folded, controlled his breathing to crazily absorb the new energy. After crazily absorbing energy for an entire hour, Xiaoyan finally slowed down, and at this point, the dark green water had paled by a few shades. Taking in the final strand of energy, Xiaoyan's body, after a brief pause, started shaking violently. His stomach pushed in, while his eyes suddenly opened. Within the black pupils were hints of white and green. Finally opening his mouth, Xiaoyan let out a breath of stale air. After the stale breath left Xiaoyan, he finally straightened. With his eyes blankly staring forward, Xiaoyan turned his neck to meet crisp, bone-cracking sounds. Then he curled his hand to feel a solid strength that brought a smile to Xiaoyan's lips. Finally, 7 Duan Qi. Closing his eyes, Xiaoyan started to explore the abundant Do Qi within his body. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.